Welcome to the Startup Grind.
All right, next. So thank you to our sponsors. Before we get started, this event would not happen without their support. Dig is a wonderful space that you're in. If you have not been here before, Dig is a co-working space, but really it's much more. It's access to mentors that can help your business. It's access to people that you can bounce ideas off of. Your first day is free in Dig. There should be free guest pass up at the entrance, so you are welcome to take one of those. I highly recommend it. Nickel City Graphics, Neil Carroll, thank you very much for doing an awesome job with the videos and the photos. If you have any needs for video or putting your business online with a video, definitely talk to Neil. Launch New York, thank you for your support and for all that you do. Launch New York is a not-for-profit organization that is access to mentors, is access to capital, helps you connect with a lot of different people. I'd recommend looking them up. They're also doing a crowdfunding campaign right now to raise money that will help fund early-stage startup companies. So if you are able to, I would encourage you to give whatever you can to help the startup community. Hatch and Russ, thank you very much for being a supporter, and also thank you for answering people's questions before the events. Jordan and team, thank you. Martin Davison, Matt, I don't know if you're here, but thank you again. Matt was on Startup TV on PBS. It aired at 4 o'clock today, so make sure if you didn't DVR that, try to catch a rerun. Shirt Outfitters, thank you very much for the lovely shirts. Colgan Law, Matthew Pelkey, and team, thank you for the beer. It makes my job much easier. And thank you to Megan, thank you to Launch, thank you to everybody who helped set up an expert table. It was very nice and we appreciate it. Next. 43 North, it's over, it was great. If you didn't hear, ACV Auctions, a Buffalo-based company, won the $1 million prize. So, congratulations. 43 North team, doing awesome job. Putting Buffalo on the map. Okay. All right. Now, did it just cut off? That's not good. Hello? All right, we fixed it. Patrick from 3AM Innovation is going to do a 60-second elevator pitch. I'm keeping you 60 seconds. I can do it. This one works.
Hello, my name is Patrick O'Connor. I'm with 3M Innovations, and our product is Flare. Most people don't realize that the current technology used for tracking firefighters isn't efficient. Most common is a pair of dog tags. So the first tag goes on the truck in which you come in on. The second one goes to an accountability officer. Now this officer physically uses a handheld whiteboard to draw out where they believe the firefighters are just off their last radio transmission. That's the problem. Our solution is Flare. It will create an on-site mesh network that will allow the fire departments the ability to locate and track the members inside a burning building. We will achieve this through a proprietary point-to-point switch network that works at high speeds. That data will then be transmitted out to a mobile tablet in real time for incident command to review and monitor the situation. Thank you. And then once, after the fact, our database, the fire departments will be able to log in at a later date and review basically their entire thing. They could recreate the scene and they could use that for training and also just critiquing their performance. So we're trying to create a system that will save firefighters' lives because they save everybody else.
So we're going to do a little video because I think the video is awesome and I think it'll do a better job giving you a little bit of background about BAK better than I can do. So keep clapping. Thank you so much for being here. So, we heard a little bit about BAK, but before BAK, there was Sûrtab. So, can you briefly talk about the journey before BAK and what you're doing before you came to Buffalo?
I got to learn a little bit about technology over the past year. So, it all started in Haiti after the earthquake. where my husband and I went to Haiti. We thought we were retired guys. We had a startup which would go to maturity in Silicon Valley, where we produced a new microchip. Then we came to the East Coast, had a wonderful time for 3 months, but then when the dog said, "Do I really have to walk for the 5th time today?" we realized that something was wrong. Unfortunately, the earthquake happened, but it was entailed some very good changes in our lives, because it gave us the opportunity to go to Haiti and try to change and help out you can say, some of the socio-economic issues in Haiti. We realized after a pretty short time that the environment for family lives in Haiti are very different from what we see in the Western world. It is pretty common that now I can maybe see a smile on the guys' faces now, that you have 3 wives throughout a lifetime. But that also means that there are a lot of single moms, and I have, because I started many, many years ago as a young lawyer in Copenhagen, where there were only 2 women who were offered jobs at law offices. I lived in a pretty male-dominated world, and I would like to promote a better situation for females, and I was so happy that my husband supported that, so I suggested, why don't we make a factory where we primarily will employ women? We cannot, of course, do that in the Western world, but we can do that in a country like Haiti. We traveled to China, and we were able to convince them to sell us components, and we established a clean room and everything that you need in order to produce the PC tablets, which was really at the forefront back then. We talk at the very early days of 2013. Well, yeah, it's just 2 years ago, but to me it sounds like the old age. Anyway, we flew in engineers from China to teach the operators, and it took them a little bit longer than the group we were able to find here in Buffalo, but after 2 to 3 months they were able to produce, and were able to deliver to universities and schools in Haiti, but even to a law school in Kenya, which was a remarkable story, because I converted my Danish law degree to a US one from University of Pittsburgh's Law School in 2009, and the law school bought 650 tablets. It was actually our very first order in Sûrtab, and exported those tablets to a sister law school in Kenya. Just think about it. US money goes from Pittsburgh to Haiti, help women there to get a better life for themselves and their children, and export it to a law school in Kenya, where suddenly students who have no chances of paying $2,000 for law books have access to education. So that was a very interesting story. That was the beginning of what we define as social entrepreneurship, namely a company that not only looks at what happens in Wall Street, which in our eyes is a stool with just 1 leg. If you don't meet the criteria every quarter, you are out of the market, you are gone, you are dead, you are killed, whatever happens. But we wanted to have a company that, of course, needs to have the stakeholders and shareholders' interest at heart, but that company should also be able to do good in society. So that's how we understand social entrepreneurship. It is a stool with 3 legs, and a stool with 3 legs turns over with more difficulty than just one with 1 leg. So we have, of course, the profit at heart, but we have the human capital just as much at heart, and then we have the greater society. We have seen this in our factory here in Buffalo, where we have been able to hire refugees from all over the world and train them properly and giving them an existence they would have, I believe, difficult to achieve otherwise. They work also with US citizens, but a big deal of our operators are refugees. And so they are producing, well, by having this job, they are creating a life for their families. But what they're doing creates a future for some other disadvantaged people, namely the guys we sell our tablets to. Our target market is it's absolutely not my own children. They have iPads and then have I don't know what. Well, fortunately they're grown, so they pay themselves. But you know, early on, it was mom and dad. So our purpose was to create a tool, not a gadget, a tool who could be the message for primarily education. We have expanded that area since then, but in the very beginning and still at the core of our business is tablets for disadvantaged people. We thought that disadvantaged students were only in Africa and other places outside the United States, but unfortunately we realized after a few months here in Buffalo that we actually have disadvantaged students in our backyard. And looking out our windows, of course, we have to cater to those guys as well. So this is a brief background of BAK. Maybe it's not that brief, but you know, I get carried away. I know I've got the question many times during this little networking session. So, where are you from? What's your accent? And etc. etc. And I don't mind being taken for a German. Well, I do mind a little bit. You know, it's because of the Second World War. So, Herbert, du hast eine Probleme? No, you're from Austria, so that's okay. Anyway, so I'm from Denmark. And Denmark was occupied by Germany for 5 years. So, you know, my parents had the issue and therefore we learned about it. And but anyway, they're okay. I'm from Denmark. I came to the United States in 1998 with our 2 kids. They were 11 and 14, and we have never looked back. Well, we have looked back, but not back. So.
How did Buffalo come on the radar? Like, how did you first hear about Buffalo, and what was your first impression, honest first impression when you came here?
So, would you like the truth or a good story?
I can handle the truth. Okay,
so the truth is also a good story, because I have to confess, which very few people know, and my children didn't know it. I came to Buffalo when I was 22 years old, and I went to the law school for 6 weeks here in Buffalo. But actually, I have to confess that it was not because Buffalo as such attracted me, but it gave me the pathway to Las Vegas, where I could meet Elvis Presley. So that's why, you know, that was Buffalo. Later on, when we got all this PR in the press and all that stuff, a guy from that course, the director of the course, he contacted us, and he might have been stalking me because he sent me a picture, you know, 40 years later. So my husband and I took him out for dinner just to avoid misunderstandings. So no, it was completely okay. But it was very interesting because when he started to talk about this coursework and all of that, suddenly it all came back to me. And I remembered, by the way, I remembered the moment I saw Niagara Falls first time. The Bolshoi Ballet was here 40 years ago, believe it or not. And so I remember very good memories. But I came to Buffalo the very, very first time because of the young man who's sitting there, Alan Rosenhock. And yes, he was in touch with me, but he was not actually available because he went on a romantic trip to Portugal. So he sent a representative. That was the 8th of March, 2014. And we were approved under the startup program in around mid-July. It was a very easy process. And but in between, from March to July, B&E, where Alan is employed, never left us alone or gave us 1 minute peace. If he didn't hear from us, he would call me up and say, "Ulla, what's next?" And you know, I had just recovered from my trip to Buffalo. We lived in Pittsburgh at that time. So I just came back home next day, early morning, 7:30. Ulla, what's next? But it paid off because we gave up. Our idea was to go to Detroit, but because of Alan, why not go to Buffalo, and we have never regretted it. The real reason, beside this fantastic service from P&E, is that University of Buffalo has a wonderful, you can say, attitude to welcome a company like ours who need engineers, programmers, interns, marketing assistants, everything. And that is available very readily. And that is, of course, a very, very good thing for a startup.
So, going backwards a little bit, the earthquake happened in Haiti. A lot of people's reaction was, it's terrible, it's a tragedy. I'm going to donate money, I'll donate what I can, I'll donate my time, maybe take a trip down there and volunteer. Why did you decide, I'm going to take it one step further, I'm going to set up a factory in Haiti, and you're not making simple widgets, you're making tablet PCs. So honestly, why?
Well,
and it's the same thing for Buffalo. Why bring high-tech manufacturing back to Buffalo instead of opening a call center or whatever?
Well, we wanted to do, well, I had to also go a little bit back in time because education as such has always been a very important part of my husband's and my life. We have been lawyers, but throughout life we have been educators for longer periods. First was a 10 years period when I came out of law school, and then when I was out of law school in Pittsburgh, I was teaching there as well. So if you cannot give your kids money and earthy riches and stuff like that, securities and inheritance and all that, you can give them education, if you can find a way to do it. And we felt that we had to help out because in Haiti, because on that frontier, because many schools had fallen apart, teachers had died. So what did little Jacques under the olive tree do with regard to his future? His parents were not there to guide him. The teacher was dead, the school was gone. I mean, this is a very, of course, dramatic picture, but that's so much easier to understand when you exaggerate. We met little Jacques and his friends and started to talk with them. I don't profess I speak French fluently in any way or shape, but I can make myself understandable. So, we told little Jacques, and that's a real story, that he had to learn English because one of Haiti's problems is that he cannot trade with the international world. Its neighboring country speaks Spanish, so they can speak with and trade with America, of course, United States, but also with South America. Haiti can only trade with France, and France doesn't want Haiti, so that's a big problem. So Haiti only has themselves, and Haiti is therefore extremely poor. So the population has to learn English. We went into a relationship with, again, University of Pittsburgh, this time business school, Cass Business School, and made them do a capstone project in developing a language project in English that would address the needs of a young guy sitting under the olive tree. So, but in order to bring this knowledge to this little guy, he needed technology, and that's how it all came about. So we also thought it was an advantage to have technology and electronics because it's independent of the weather. And it can really make a change in people's life. I have to admit, and to the dismay of some part of my family members, I really don't take an interest in the metal or the components of the tablet at all, but I love what it can do. So our son is different. He loves all the gadgets and everything. I don't know about our daughter, and I guess my husband is kind of in between. So it is for us, it was this passion of trying to create a change in people's life. And that brings me to another really important subject, which I could guess you had on your list. So we haven't talked before, so it's not a, well, whatever.
Keep going, you're on the roll.
Somebody would probably ask, what does it take to become an entrepreneur? I think this is a very relevant question for many who consider a startup, becoming a startup or becoming an entrepreneur. It takes passion, total passion. If you ever consider during that period of time, what is my exit strategy, you are going the wrong way. Never become an entrepreneur, because if you are not ready to do the job and try to execute your plan 24/7, you're not the right one, and you will. I don't think you will succeed because there are so many obstacles on your road.
Can you talk about a time where maybe somebody doubted you? Tablet manufacturing, that's not going to work in Haiti. Tablet manufacturing, that's not going to work in Buffalo. Describe your reaction to that, and how you overcame that doubt that might have been in front of you.
I talk about my anxiety. Xanax.
However you kept going.
No. Okay. We had our little doubt, but not too much. When the engineers we imported from China to teach the operators how to assemble a tablet and how to organize the logistics and the clean room and all of that, they came back to us and said, this does not work, this will never work. And the reason they said that to us was because we had this idea that we are not going to put up an assembling line. We want every operator to finish the product from A to Z, because we wanted them to have a fulfilling day. So they saw at the end of the day, this is what I did. I did so and so many tablets, and that was great. Instead of just screwing the same screw in a million times during the day, which I have seen tons of times in China during all the time I spent there. I've spent time in China since 2002 until 2007, 3 times a year, and then again when we started with the Sûrtab project. We didn't really understand why it was a perception it couldn't be done. But they came back and forth for, I believe, about a month and tried to convince us that we had to put up an assembling line. But we refused to do it, also because we we realized, or it came to a realization that if we had every operator to finish one product, there would be a much higher degree of accountability. You could never point at Josephine and say, she did it, not me. So everybody would know who made a faulty tablet, and it could go back and be repaired by that person, and hopefully the person would never repeat the same mistake. But it was a big deal for us, because the Chinese engineers was about to leave because we had a completely different business perception than they had.
So if I got an idea and it's got a social aspect to it, starting a business is hard enough, but if you have a business that has a social mission, that can be even tougher, because now you have to convince investors, you have to convince customers that the startup's going to work, but we're also going to have this social mission. So could you give any advice to an entrepreneur who wants to start a startup that also has a social aspect to it?
Yeah, I think I can. If you consider to make a business or start up a business like that, I really think you have to find a business where you will be a niche in the industry. You cannot start a business with a social aspect where you are competing for the money and all of that if you are up against the big guys. We do not believe that BAK is in any way competing with Apple, with Samsung, and who know I. We think we are a niche product. We do produce tablets, but we produce it to a specific market. So what we deliver is a solution, not only the tablet, but we deliver a solution with specific components and specific software, depending on the buyer of the product or the recipient of the product. So, for example, if we deliver to a correctional facility, for good reason, there shouldn't be Wi-Fi. And maybe there shouldn't be a camera either. And you cannot call up Apple and say, by the way, I would like to have 300 tablets without a camera and without Wi-Fi. So it's a different environment, and we can adjust the tablet to the recipient, depending on the industry the recipient is in.
So watching that video, one thing that struck me was it seems like a very happy place to work. And I know it was a video, but I definitely get the impression that your employees are very engaged. You know, they want to show up to work. They believe in the mission. So how can you get your employees to buy in and to not just see it as a job, but believe in it themselves?
Well, I think it is actually due to our exceptional HR director. And we have a system when we choose our employees, which evaluate the individual as a whole. Our HR director is a psychologist, but also has a graduate business degree from NYU, so she understands the entire spectrum. And I think it is, to a high degree, her, you can say, she's the reason for why we're able to have such a, you can say, unified workforce. We need to have people with good technical skills, and they are tested before they're employed. We have our small boxes of Lego, you know, the Danish toy, you will know that. And we have bought 10 aircrafts. We take them apart, put them in front of the applicant, and ask the applicant to put it together within a certain time limit. Many of them are able to do it, some are not. But we also take one of the building blocks off or away from some of these piles of plastics and put it in some of the other piles and see if they're able to communicate with each other and allow the one who's missing one to get it. So maybe this guy over there, he finished 5 minutes before the other one, and he's sitting there, I did a good job, I'm getting employed. And then he looks over there, and there's Rosita. And Rosita, she is lacking the wing of her aircraft, but the wing of her aircraft is at the other guy's place. So we are watching how they are able to kind of help each other. If they don't help each other, the guy who finished before is not employed, and he's it. So we want people with good values, good ethical standards, the wish to work together and to do good for each other. And then on top of that, I think it also helps that our chairman is extremely charismatic and that kind of transcends into the entire company. He's the guy you saw up there, and he was supposed to be here today, but he couldn't, so I'm sorry, you have to have me instead of. But I'm trying to kind of give the impression he would have done if he had been here. He would also speak with a Danish accent, I have to say.
You're doing a great job. So you also received some funding from Galistano, the former Sabres owner. Can you just talk about that process briefly, and maybe any advice that you learned from that fundraising effort or other times that you were raising money for your business?
So the specifics about Galistano was that you got a phone call Friday afternoon that he would like to, if we could come and meet up next day. We had no relationship to him as such, but here is where the press comes in very handy for us, because of the press, the people who recommended us could make a reference to all the press we've got, and so we had a kind of a feeling for who we were, and he asked if we could meet next day at 9 o'clock, and this was 4 o'clock Friday. The thing is that he lives in Florida, so it was quite an exercise to get down there, and he wanted to see me, he wanted to see JP, and our son Christian. And so we went down there and went up at 9 o'clock. At 9:30 he said, oh, by the way, I have a golf appointment at 10 o'clock. And then I said, why on earth should we come then? And then he laughed, thanks God, and said, well, it was a joke. And he kept, and then he kept us until 5 o'clock in the afternoon, and then he suddenly said, would you like me to be your partner? and then we laughed. So who wouldn't like to be a partner with Tom Galistano? In particular, when you are in an industry where you have huge cost for inventory before you sell your goods, it's very, very important that you have your finances. And that's one of the big, big issues for startups. Because when you need the money as a startup, the banks are not there for you, because you need to show, you have guarantees and all kinds of things which you don't have before they will step in. When the cash flow starts to dribble into your money box, they will knock at your door and say, I really would like you as a customer. And so it's a very difficult bridge if you are in manufacturing to be able to cover the inventory as a startup. So we were extremely lucky that he would step in and help out.
Awesome. That reminded me of something Gary Vaynerchuk said. Somebody asked him, like, how do you raise capital? And he said, as a startup, just do a really good job and keep working at the mission that you set out to do, and investors will come to you. So I think that's what happened with you. You're doing a great job.
I think that happened to me, but I don't agree, because we did a semi-startup in California before we started this business here, and we had to raise $100,000 every month for 10 years to fund research and all kinds of things. And during that period, we had to reach out and find organizations or shareholders or individuals who would like to be shareholders. The story with Tommy Golisano is, you can say, kind of a fairy tale, but I don't think it is a general situation for a startup. I really think that even if you work hard, even if you are very intelligent and you have a bright idea, it's difficult to convince professional investors that you can make it, because there are so many obstacles on your road. And in particular, I would say if you're young, you are more doubted than if you are a little bit more seasoned. So in that respect, it was really good for me. But anyway, so it is not that easy.
We shouldn't be expecting phone calls from Tom Golisano. What do you think entrepreneurs do too much of, and what do you think entrepreneurs do too little of? That could be from your own journey or from other people that you've observed or worked with.
I think that first of all, it's a good question, and it's not just to stole my answer, but it's a very good question. I think that entrepreneurs focus too little upon protecting their IP rights. It's something many entrepreneurs just push out there because they're not really certain they will succeed in what they're doing. So they have so many things just in front of them on their desk that they say, oh, I do this today, and then I'll think about protecting my IPs tomorrow. And it's also expensive to apply for patents. It's expensive troublesome to apply for trademarks and all of that. But it is so important. It's just as important as your invention and your idea. So if you have a good friend who can help you out, please take that help, or maybe even try to get some funds just to do it. You'll regret it afterwards if you don't, really.
I'm looking at you, Jordan. He's an IP attorney. So.
Okay. I don't know him, so no permission.
If anybody has IP questions, talk to Jordan afterwards. What do you think Buffalo is doing good as a business community, as a startup community, and what do you think that we can do better as a community?
Well, the last thing will be difficult for me to answer, because I think you have done everything one could ever imagine. I mean, I have lived almost all over the world, and I have never, honestly, met a more welcoming community than Buffalo. Not only at the social plan, around in bars when I'm there alone, but it's a professional support you will get, even if there's no advantage from the other end. When you live in California, where I lived for 10 years, people are only doing something if they can get something back. Here we have got tremendous help in all kinds of ways from people who gave professional help without standing there and say, okay, then what can you do for me? And that is unusual, it's really unusual. And on a more private frontier, I mean, if you meet somebody in the beginning, I had no clue of how I came from A to Z, so I would often stop people and say, where do I find so-and-so? They will always be available and ready and to help. It was amazing, really amazing. I know it's hard, it sounds too good to be true, but it is true. I can tell you a little story about this. When we told our friends in Pittsburgh that we were moving to Buffalo, they said, Buffalo? And they said, you must be crazy. And they said, well, I don't think we are, but we are moving to Buffalo. And then when we had settled in our place, we started to invite our friends up. And they said, oh my gosh, we didn't know this about Buffalo. And I mean, your beautiful parks, your waterfront, the historic village, Allentown and Elmwood and all of that, your wonderful museums. So if I were not in the tablets business, I could be a tour guide now.
So you've worked very closely with education and students and teachers in third world countries and in America. Do you have any insights or thoughts on how the American education system can encourage innovation, whether that's entrepreneurs or just students being more engaged?
Well, I think that the American system already provides the soil for entrepreneurship to a degree which you don't see in other countries. And the reason for that may be unexpected for you. But you are gifted with the language you were born with. Because you speak English or American, you don't need to spend time on French, German, Latin, Spanish, Portuguese, or Belgian. No, they speak French there. So you don't have, Europeans spend so much time, young Europeans, in learning other languages that they don't have the same time for the scientific subjects. The scientific subjects often are the subjects that are something that will be captured by an entrepreneurial mind. I know communication and so on is also part of the business now, but if you want to be a software engineer, you need to understand math. If you want to be a biotech guy, you need to understand chemistry and biology, and so on and so on. So maybe the question is, do the US school system encourage students enough to be entrepreneurs? They should, because America were built by entrepreneurs only a couple of 100 years ago. So, and I think what you're doing here today is one step towards that, goal, because one day when you guys have kids, or the kids you have grow up, you will encourage them to maybe start their own business because you have been part of this movement in Buffalo, and in a way it's your obligation to go down that route in order to better the economy of the United States, because it can only thrive if you have businesses. Big governments do not create, in my opinion, in a country this big, an economy that can support the society. Yeah. You know that's my secret.
It's a trick. Man, I lost my train of thought. Who is somebody that you...
Are you shy?
Now I feel awkward. Who is somebody that you look up to and why, whether it's an entrepreneur, business leader, or else?
Did you say my spouse?
It can be your spouse, or
no.
or else, like if,
no,
if somebody
okay,
else.
Yes, I understand that. I look up to, and that's the embarrassing thing is I forgot her name, but she's a Chinese woman who has founded one of the big telecommunications companies in China. And being a woman in China in the industry really requires something. Unfortunately, I do not know her personally, but some months ago I was asked exactly the same question, and I was actually asked it ahead of time, so I had a chance to figure out whom would I really look up to. And I think that she has done a fabulous job. But I think that in your everyday life, there are so many role models. I literally admire our operators, the women who come to work every day. They take a bus maybe for 1 hour, and they have 3 kids at home, and they get a lousy salary, and you know, so it's really they get more than minimum, I have to say, so it's not that bad. But compared to you guys, and the people, and I mean it goes for men too, who are really struggling to make ends meet. I do admire them that they can show up with a smile on their face and try to work properly and behave decently for 8 hours every day without a sick day and without asking for extra time off and all of that. I think that's amazing.
What does the future of BAK look like?
The future BAK, I'm not having more children, so, but anyway.
Of BAK USA, the company.
So we only live for a limited amount of years, so we need to have a little bit fun when we can, so I'm sorry. So anyway, the future BAK hopefully will be nationwide. It will hopefully still be headquartered, that's the plan here in Buffalo. But we will, hopefully we will build exactly a copy of what we have right now at Michigan, in other places like Texas, maybe Philadelphia, Detroit, or other places where you will find the same constellation of a distressed area with disadvantaged people, so we can keep our social aspect.
My last question, I ask everybody this question, it's a tough one. If Buffalo is to succeed, it needs more of blank.
It is certainly a tough question. Do you know what? I actually think that Buffalo already can succeed. Buffalo has already succeeded a lot. When you see the number of applicants for the business competition 43 North, that's a huge success already. And I participated in the event at the conference, I think it was at the conference center or wherever, yeah it was, when they had the ceremony, and when you see the quality of these new startup companies this year and last year, there is, and you see what's going on at the medical campus, where there will be an influx of somewhere between 2,000 to 5,000 new jobs in over 5 to 6 years, something like that is the forecast. I think you have succeeded. But one big thing which really has to take place fast is the internet connectivity in the city. That is really something that has to get a push and a kick somewhere. And that will probably take 1.5 years if we are with a little bit of luck. That is the only thing we really lack here in the city. But otherwise, I think you are really down the right path.
Awesome. With that, I'm going to take questions from the audience. Start over here. How about that the internet question, Kola?
Not a question, but we should talk, because myself, Sanjay, and a few other people are working on bringing fiber to the home to Buffalo. So I would like to talk to you afterwards.
Yeah, okay, you're very welcome.
Hi, ULLA.
Hi, Robert. He's one of my first dates here.
I wasn't the guy that was sending the letter after 40 years ago. So what you've done such a great job of, that I'd like you just to articulate a little bit, is you've built a staff of really well-educated individuals that have recently graduated from college, from all the way from an undergrad maybe even up to the PhD level.
Mm-hmm.
For operating a startup company, how do you convey to them the benefits of choosing you over going to an IBM or something that's established? Is it the opportunity that they have for working with a startup? I don't believe that you're offering equity to them. So what is it that...
Well, we hope we will be able to offer the equity, and fortunately our new investor is agreeing with us on that point, but that was not was not on the table back then. I believe, and that's what I hear over and over again when I'm with younger people, and that there's a new trend in society. The new trend in society goes to organic, authenticity, back to the roots, and all of that. No more fake plastic or unreal talk. And I think that many young people, at least those we were able to engage, they want to spend their life on something that is meaningful. And I may sound like a gospel preacher or something right now, but the BAK is our mission. It's really our mission that we want to help bring education to people who cannot get it otherwise. And we also realize that this education is not ultimately the best, but it's better than nothing. And after we hired the first couple of guys, in particular when we hired our first PhD, and he saw that our talk actually also was our walk, and he saw how our operators kind of took in the whole situation. He kind of felt good about being there 8 hours a day. And although we do not pay IBM salaries, but we do not underpay either. So it's a kind of in-between situation. But I strongly believe that the people who are the right fit for BAK is not the guys who have dollar signs in both eyes, but it's okay if they have it in one eye, but in the other eye, they should have the well-being of other people. There are many reasons for that. One of the reasons is completely egoistical from JP's and my viewpoint or side. We want to be with people during our day who share our, you can say, our affinity for other human beings. We want to feel comfortable. We want to have a good life, because if you think about it, when the amount of hours you spend at your work during a day is much more really than you spend with your spouse or your girlfriend or boyfriend or whatever. And so if you're not with good people, you like or you respect or you whatever, but in everything positive, you waste your life. So we're looking for people who, of course, have intelligence and who can function and execute what we want, but it is equally as important that they are what you call a good fit. They need to understand the culture and burn for our mission. And I wouldn't say it was a surprise that we couldn't find this in Buffalo, but we were very happy we could. And maybe also our time in California kind of brought that about, because this philosophy of a good life, a meaningful life, and so on, was more prevalent in Buffalo than in California than it was in Pittsburgh when we were around. But then when we came here, imported this kind of philosophy, it kind of got traction. And we have it on display in our factory. We have huge glass windows between the operators and the administration to demonstrate that we are equal boys and we respect each other, and they wouldn't be there without us, we wouldn't be there without them. And if we can find young people or older people or seniors like me that share that vision, they're welcome to come in and look for a job.
Thank you for coming, by the way. This might seem a little convoluted, so if you don't really feel comfortable with the answer, you're welcome to take some time, or we can put it off. But
tomorrow?
You're a mission-driven company.
Yes.
And you have a competitive strategy based on focus. That's your generic competitive strategy. I was just wondering if you could maybe talk on your perception of how that provides your company with a competitive advantage.
Well, the competitive advantage, I think I briefly touch upon that. If you are a school with children who have special needs, we can provide educational tool that cater to those guys, and you cannot order that from Samsung or from Apple. So they will come to us and ask us and say, we have these guys, they have speech problems, or they have vision problems, or they have whatever it is, and we can, together with our software connections, help us out creating a tablet that caters to those needs. So that is and that's why I said that our business is a niche. Does that answer your question?
Yeah, thank you.
Kind of.
All right, so I think you said during your talk, I might have misunderstood a little bit, you had to come up with $100,000 or so a month for a certain period of time, you said, for investment reasons? Yeah, in a different business that was? Yeah. Or is that different?
No, different business.
Even in a different business, how do you do that without real financial backing? How do you just come up with large amounts of income in such a short amount of time at an early stage?
You have to pray to God. No, I can tell you, I've got that question a million times over the past year, since 2006, where we sold that business. So it's about 10 years. And really, there's no answer to it. My advice would be to network, and network, and network, and network. And always to behave properly, always to treat other people nicely. So people will think about you in a positive way when there is a situation where you suddenly will come forward and say, well, we need this, and etc., etc. But of course, the prerequisite is that you have a project that is worthwhile, and which is special and unique. And we actually did have that in California, so which drew a lot of attention and had a lot of evidence support. But if you have that, still it's very, very difficult. But it is my experience throughout my entire career that what goes around comes around. And that's one of the most important lessons I've had in life, that you can never, ever misbehave. If you do, it will come back and haunt you at some point. So I'm sorry I cannot give you a recipe from A to Z, but to have a huge, what was in the old days called a Rudalex, that's one good thing. Behave properly, be honest, and be around and have a good project. But still it's difficult.
One more question. Chris. I told Chris he had to ask a question.
I have a similar small-scale social, well, I was small-scale social enterprise, but a similar mission in which really we focus on the end user as the the part of our supply chain, our producers as beneficiaries, but also the end user. But in your model, you have both your producers as beneficiaries, or your employees, and your end users as beneficiaries.
That's why there's an extra leg on the chair.
So just the question is just for long-term financial sustainability, what would you say to somebody or anyone who has either a small-scale startup that's trying to grow that startup, but that's kind of where they start? Does it go back to the finance at the end and who can get behind it, or is there any other hope?
I think you can avoid many of the financial obstacles with good planning. Remember, I am a lawyer by training, so from a very early age I was asked to advise my clients about this and that, which was totally irresponsible because I was 24 years old. But over time the advice became more and more savvy, and I saw that if my clients really took very, very good care of the little money they had, and maybe waited a little bit more before they launched the thing, it was easier for them to be successful. For example, wait until you have your IPs. If you have your IPs protected, it's so much easier to get investor. Have, you can say, a shadow staff waiting to jump in when you get the money, so you can introduce those guys to a potential investor and say, if I get your money, I can employ A, B, C, and D. And don't be stingy when it comes to employ people who has really competencies. That is because those are the ground pillars of your business. And first and foremost, if you can avoid it, don't employ friends, because it's very likely they're not friends 2 years later, because a startup is so difficult. So I think that's a very important piece of advice. And don't take money from your dad and mom, because your siblings will shout. So.
Thank you so much. Thank you all for coming. I think we're going to stick around with questions.